from San Angelo, my friend Gabe.
Good evening. My name's Gabe, and I am a grateful, recovered alcoholic. Thank you, James, for those very kind words. Thanks for not setting the bar too high. Try to fulfill them. My sobriety date's June 3rd, 2014. That was the best and the worst day of my life. First and foremost, I want to thank all of y'all for letting me be here. And I want to thank the committee and James for hosting me, Jordy and Paige, and everybody that was involved in this. I want to thank the old-timers. Y'all paved the way for us, and thank you. And most importantly, I want to thank the newcomers, because you're why I'm here. You're why we're all here. As James said, this kind of a disclaimer. My story is a little extreme. It doesn't have to get this bad. Circumstances and facts are different. The journey is always the same. And we've all walked this journey in one way or another. And this is not my story. This is God's story. This is a testimony, and it's for God's glory and God's glory only. And it's for the newcomer. It's to give that person hope. It's for those of any of us that are struggling in life. And I cannot explain to you how absolutely blessed and grateful I am to be here today, because I shouldn't be here. At the worst, I should be dead. And at the best, I should be in the penitentiary. Instead, I get to celebrate with you wonderful people at this conference. And God is so cool. God is so good. So I'm from San Angelo, Texas, born and raised, born into a fantastic family. We were not churchgoers. My parents were heavy drinkers. Very successful family. My dad's a doctor. I grew up wanting nothing, lacking nothing. My parents are still married. I didn't come from a broken family. My parents argued a lot. They had a lot of fun. They partied a lot. They had a lot of friends. There was alcohol all over the place. And these guys were having a really good time, and I grew up into that. On my mother's side of the family, my grandfather, he had this disease, and both my mother's brothers are alcoholics. My grandfather, I watched him drink himself to death at his age of 66. I was 10 years old. And my family would take turns going up to Dallas and hiding keys. And, we're alcoholics. We're going to find a way. And he did. And he drank himself to death. And I remember watching him die with hospice around his bed. And he took his last breath, and he screamed, and he died. Both of my uncles recovered a few years after that, after both of their wives left them. And their children's relationships with them were temporarily destroyed. They've been mended since then, and they've both been sober for 35 and 36 years, respectively. Yeah, and they've been two fantastic role models in my life, and they have done incredible things, and they've sacrificed for me in ways that I can never repay them or thank them for, other than living this thing out and making all about God. So, I know this disease well. My family knows this disease well. We all have been touched by this disease in one way or another. All of our families have. And I knew there, just like everybody in this room, I knew that there was something different about me. And I never felt normal or a part of. And so I grew up always searching for something, and I didn't know what it was, but I was searching for something, and I looked for it in everything I could find it. And I was 14 years old, and my family and I were in a small private plane crash. And I had never been to church before, maybe for a wedding or a funeral. And when the plane was crashing, they say there's a fundamental concept of God in all of us, right? Every human being. For the first time in my life, I prayed. And I said, God, if you get me out of this, I promise I will be yours forever. And I meant it at the time, 100%. I did. And we survived. It was pretty horrific. Both my parents were wounded pretty bad. They're alive today. But after that, I came home to this like heroes procession. I was somebody different. And something had been tapped into my ego that was different. And I really enjoyed this. And it was probably not coincidental that about a month later, myself and two of my best friends started drinking alcohol. We went into my parents' liquor cabinet and got the vodka. And I took 12 shots of vodka, and I could outdrink my friends. Man, it was the first thing I could do better than these guys. They were knocked out at, around shot 9 or 10, and I'm still going strong. And I had arrived. That was something that I said, well, maybe I'm pretty good at this. I think I'll just keep doing it. And it did something for me. It changed something in here. And it gave me the satisfaction. I put something in here that felt void. It felt vacant. And this satisfied it. So we drank like that for all the way through junior high, the end of junior high, and high school. And we were not drinking like normal high school students. Me and my friends were drinking, and it was like Dazed and Confused, the movie. We were trying to outdo these guys. And the first time I was introduced to this program, I got so drunk at prom that I caused such a bad scene, and I cussed out everybody. I cussed out the police officers, the teachers, and I'm running from the police, and I fell down a flight of stairs, and I ran into the middle of the street in front of the Cactus Hotel in San Angelo, Texas, and stopped all the traffic and explained that our principal is the greatest, principal on the planet. And people are honking their horns and going, what is this lunatic doing? And this was not really novel to me. I'd had behaviors like this before, but this time it was public, and they had to do something about it because everybody saw it. So I was about to graduate. I was a senior, and we only had a couple of months left until I walked the stage, so we made a deal with them that I would go to treatment, and everything would be swell after that, right? Everything's going to be fantastic. And one of my family friends, and this is important, he's an attorney in San Angelo, Texas, and he was there when I was born. They don't have children. I was kind of his quasi, if anything happened to my parents, they would kind of be my surrogate parents. He was like a quasi-godfather. And him and my parents were able to get me out of all these fires. And that was the first major one that they got me out of. And I went to La Hacienda for 30 days, and I played the part. I filled out the workbooks. These people talked to me, and they said, we're pretty sure you're one of us. And I said, I'm pretty sure I don't want anything that you're selling. And guys, I was thinking about this program, and I'm like, one day at a time. I don't want to one day anything at a time. Think about this. None of us come through this door on a winning streak. And I'm thinking, this might be a glum lot. I appreciate your offer of membership, but I think right now I'm going to decline. So I did. I got out of treatment. I walked the stage. I immediately went home and started drinking. There was not even a thought in my brain that maybe I should actually try this thing. It was, my parents were the same way. Pull up your bootstraps. We're a good family. We're a strong family. You're gonna get through this and go be productive and successful, whatever that means. So I get it together, but something in my mind triggered, and I was thinking, you know what? I'd been accepted at Texas Tech University. If I go to Texas Tech University, I may die. So I had the wherewithal and the knowledge that, based on my experience, that if I went to Tech, it might kill me. My quasi-godfather, Tip, he went to the Citadel in South Carolina. It's a military college. And he had been trying to get me to go to this place all my life. So I thought, well, there's going to be some structure in this place. And it sounds like this will add to my reputation. Maybe this is a good idea. So off to South Carolina I go. I go to South Carolina, and I'm successful there. I'm the leader of our company. I'm an honor rep. I am all these things. I'm double majoring. Everything is going right, and I'm still an alcoholic. Everywhere I go, I find myself there. And there were several occasions where most people probably would have been kicked out of school. One in particular, right before we graduated, I got so drunk and said horrible things to our tactical officer, who's an actual officer in the military, horrible things that I'm not going to repeat here. But they were things that to this day make me cringe. And I tried to fight everyone in our company. They chased me through the battalion, and I fell down our flight of stairs, cracked my head open multiple places. I'm fighting them all the way to the infirmary. I get to the infirmary, the police show up. I grab the police officer's gun, and I'm trying to pull it out to shoot myself with it. I tried to stab myself in the neck with a pin. It's a mess. I get to the hospital, I pull out all the IVs, and I'm running naked down the hospital, and I get slid tackled by my best friend. I get called into the commandant's office, and he's like, some other things that happened in our company, and we were kind of holding it together. He's like, you've got 1 month to graduate. We're going to let you make it. I don't want to hear a peep out of my company, or I'm going to come through there like a hot knife through butter. And that was by the grace of God that I walked the stage, because I probably shouldn't have. And I did. So I graduated, and I spent another year in Charleston, South Carolina. And I applied to law school. I figured, I'm supposed to go do something like this. I didn't know really what I was doing. And all of this is just really to satisfy something that I'm trying to find. And it's all about this ego and this reputation that I'm trying to build. And I couldn't really explain it. I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm just doing what I think society wants me to do and what I think my ego wants me to do. And I want to be popular, and I want people to like me, and I want to be successful. So I apply to law school and get accepted, and I go to law school at St. Mary's University. And there's no structure there. There was no... I didn't have to be in at a certain time. I have no idea how I graduated law school. Somehow I did. I received multiple DWIs, and I beat them. I received 1 DWI in college. This time in my life, I think I had 3 and none on my record. And by the grace of God, I graduated. However, my fiance, who went to law school, I met her in law school, she had had enough. And we had been living together for about 2 years. And she told me it's either the bottle or me, and I, without hesitation, said the bottle. You're not going to leave me. Well, the day we graduated, she did. She walked out that day. And I flew to a wedding in Charleston, South Carolina, and I came back home and walked in my door, and everything was gone. And that was probably the first time that I felt pain on a level that I hadn't felt pain before. And it hurt. And I wanted to die. And so I drank myself into oblivion for the next 3 months, and all my friends went and took the bar exam. All the people I graduated with. I couldn't put clothes on. I couldn't get off the floor of my house. So my friends moved me back. I can't take the bar exam. I'm incapable of doing anything. A couple of my friends moved me back to San Angelo, Texas, and I'm with these guys, 2 of my best friends that I've known forever, who, and by the way, some of my story, I'm an alcoholic, and there are other proclivities that come with my disease. It's part of my story. I do talk about them, but I am an alcoholic, and that is my story, and that's why I'm here, and that's why I exhibit these other behaviors. And so these 2 fellas are banging heroin and methamphetamines, and they decide the guy that's drinking needs to go to treatment. So I wake up, and there's a bag packed, and I'm like, where are we going? They're like, you're going to rehab, brother. So off we go, and because we're all insane, completely insane, I'm going to get as loaded as I can, and they're okay with this plan. I'm going to get as loaded as I can before I go to treatment, because this is going to be my last drink, right? Or maybe it's something like that. I mean, is this traditional? Maybe it's just a ceremony. I really don't know, but I know I'm going to treatment, and I ain't going in there sober. So I get so loaded, I go to Abilene, Texas, and I'm going to the detox center there at Serenity House. And I get there, and I don't remember anything. I don't remember getting there. All I know is I wake up 3 days later, and I'm in ICU, and my sister and my mother are crying next to me. And I'm like, whoa, And the nurse comes in and is like, whoa. And the doctor comes in and is like, whoa. And they're like, do you know what day it is? And I calculated it and figured it out, got it right. And they were like, do you know where you're at? And I'm like, I was on the way to Abilene. And I think I got the day wrong by one day, but they were like, I can't believe you're not brain dead. And what happened was when they got there, they put me in a wheelchair and my friends took off. And it's not their fault. They thought I was just doing what I normally did. They didn't realize how much I drank. And the nurse that was on duty realized that I wasn't breathing. And so they resuscitated me and took me to Hendrick Hospital and I had a .556 BAC. And the only reason why I survived that is because my tolerance was so high. And they said, if you get to that level again, we're probably going to bury you. Try not to do that. So I went to Serenity House, went to treatment there, got out, met a girl in treatment while we're there. She picked me up. And let me tell you how this worked out for me. She picked me up from treatment, and we left, and we went back to San Angelo, and then she went back to Fredericksburg, and I went to meet my brother-in-law at a Celebrate Recovery meeting, and I had a bottle of whiskey in my car, and so I'm out in the parking lot drinking while they're inside, and I'm driving home, and I turned the wrong direction going down 87, and there's a DPS officer right in front of me. So I'm going to jail. I get out of jail. I bonded myself out of jail, got out of jail, and got arrested again the next night for the same thing. Got out of jail again, went out to my parents' ranch, and I'm kind of persona non grata. They didn't want me there, so they had me arrested a third time that week for trespassing. So at this point, we got to form a plan, and so the plan is Gabe's going to go to CRTC it's SATF, for 9 months. And we're going to dismiss the charges outright because all my charges at this time get dismissed. I'm not going to live any other way. And so we're going to go to treatment. We're going to do it for 9 months. I wasn't cool with this, but I didn't really have an option at this point. And, you're going to do what needs to be done. And then you're going to go and you're going to take the bar exam and you're going to become an attorney and everything's going to be okay. So I go do my 9 months at SATF. I didn't even have to do aftercare. I was that special. I talked my way out of that. So all the other guys had to stay there and do aftercare, and not me. I'm special. I get to go to Austin, and I'm going to go study for the bar exam and take the bar, and I'm going to become who I'm supposed to become, right? So I go to Austin, and I'm in Austin, and I'm sober, and I've been sober for 3 months, and I get because I'm insane, and I get the idea that, I can go to the strip club because I like them, and I'm going to stay sober, and I'm going to drink tonic and water, and this is perfectly normal. So I do, and I'm at the strip club. I'm at the gentleman's club, and I recognize this girl, and she comes over, and we kind of like, have I met you before? And she's like, did you ever live in Charleston, South Carolina? Well, as a matter of fact, I did. Did you ever go to the Southern Belle? Matter of fact, I did. And so she worked there, and we began a business relationship at that point where I provided the cocaine and she provided other things. And at some point, I decided it was a good idea to let her move in with me. And there are some things you don't do in life, and that's one of them. And I told her I might have mentioned that she could move in with me. She needed a place to stay, and she showed up on my front porch. So she moves in, and at this point, I have wrecked my car. I've full-blown relapsed. I've gotten another DWI. I'm on bond for a DWI. And luckily, I didn't kill anybody when I wrecked the car. A car hit and ran me and took off. So who knows what they were doing. And I caused a wreck. And so she's living with me, and then she moves a few of her friends in with me. And I had a sponsor at the time, believe it or not, because I'm still kind of going into this program. Like, people are kind of like, hey, you need to go to AA. And my bondsman was like, hey, you really need to go to AA, and you're going to go to jail if you don't. So I've got this sponsor who's an attorney, who is kind of a family friend, and he's like, Gabe, you live within 1,000 feet of Bedichek Middle School, and you're running a brothel. So you may want to do something about this because it's going to be really bad if you don't. And I'm like, okay. So I get home, and I kick them all out. And I'm like, y'all got to go. And I'm drunk, and I'm loaded. Y'all got to go. Y'all got to get out of here. And so she punches me a few times and kicks a couple of holes in the wall, and she takes off. Well, just so happened that I told one of her friends that I wanted to drink myself to death, I just wanted to die is what I said. And so he took that literally, and she told him, well, you better call the police and tell him that he's suicidal. And they both did. So I'm sitting in my house, and I hear my name come over an intercom, and I look out the curtains, and there's 3 police cars sitting in my cul-de-sac, and they're telling me to come out with my hands in the air. And I'm like, this is kind of strange. I figure in my mind that she told them that I'm on bond and I'm drinking, right? I had no idea what was going on. And so I'm like, well, I'm not going to come outside. That's ridiculous. So I'm just going to, I had my 2 dogs with me. So me and my 2 dogs are just going to stay here. And I'm going to leave the doors locked, shut the blinds. And I'm going to go finish my 2 handles of scotch. And I did. And then I drunk out. And a blackout drunk. I took my 2 dogs, went into my bedroom, and little did I know that there was a 7.5-hour standoff going on outside in the cul-de-sac. They've evacuated the entire cul-de-sac. They've called my parents. My best friends from high school who live in Austin are there, and they're like, look, we've got a key. Like, he's drunk and in bed. He's not suicidal. If you kill his dogs, he will be. And they're like, no, he hasn't broken the law, so we got to do this by the book, and I have yet to figure out what that means. But I'm asleep in bed. They've got the bomb squad and the SWAT teams, and I come to the smell of plastic explosive. And there's dust in the air, and I look down, and there's a robot next to my bed. And the robot's telling me, first of all, I mean, when you wake up and there's a robot next to your bed, you're a little confused. You're confused on what year it is, and you're confused about a whole variety of other things. So I'm confused, and the robot's telling me to come out with my hands in the air. I'm going to comply at this point. Like, whatever has happened has gotten out of hand, and this robot's already blown down my front door and my bedroom door with C4, so you win. So I'm following the robot out. The problem is I'm so drunk that I passed out on the couch on the way out there, just fell over. And so the SWAT teams threw in the flashbangs and came in through the front, the back door, and drugged me out and broke a couple of, you know how it goes when they use the SWAT team. It's never pleasant. And so I get to the hospital, and the police officers are like, hey, here's what happened. They told us that you were suicidal. Just so happened at the exact same time, a couple of shots were fired in your neighborhood, and they said you had a gun, and I didn't. All my guns were in West Texas, but so that's why they brought the SWAT teams, and they're like, maybe we overreacted, and I'm like, yeah, maybe, and so they're like, well, but here's the deal: we also know you're on bond, and we're gonna write this report, and no one's really gonna see this report, and we're just gonna kind of leave some details out. Because if we don't, you're going to go to jail and they're going to no bond you. And guys, all I wanted was to go get another drink. I really didn't care about consequences as long as I wasn't going to jail and I could run by the liquor store on the way home with a gigantic hole in my house. I was okay with all this. And my dogs were alive. So, it really no harm, no foul. Like, all right, let's let bygones be bygones because this is sane. And so we do. I'm persona non grata at this point in this neighborhood. So I have to move, and I moved to East Austin, which was it was a terrible idea as well. And I'm in East Austin, and at this time in 2007, I worked at the state capitol I was an assistant sergeant of arms, and my life is such a mess. I went back to the sergeant of arms for the Texas Senate, told him the story, said I'm sober, which was kind of a lie. It was a full lie. And was like, hey, do you have any position you need? He's like, yeah, you can be one of my messenger's assistants. So I'm working for him, and I moved to East Austin where I was introduced to crack cocaine, which I really liked a lot, and a variety of other drugs. And so I'm drinking because I'm drinking all day long, and I'm doing that. It was a mess, and I'm working at the Capitol, and I'm doing drugs at the Capitol, and drinking at the Capitol. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm on probation at this time for this DWI, and my judge went to law school with my boss, who was a senator, and I actually blew numbers in her courtroom. I blew a .117 in front of her and a probation officer, and they let me walk out of there that day. I talked my way out of it. And the true story. And she was like, I can't take you away from Bob in the middle of session. And I knew when I walked out of that courtroom, there was no way I was going to make it to the end of session. My life was unsustainable. And I had my crack dealer living with me. His name is Ice. I do not believe that's his God-given name. Him and his girlfriend had taken over my bedroom, and I tried to kick them out. And at this point, things were so bad that I got called into my boss's office, and he said, we got to let you go, man. You need to go get help. We're going to leave you on Cobra. Please go to treatment. And we're going to give you your last paycheck. We're not firing you, but we need you to resign. And so I did, and then I tried to kick Ice and his girlfriend out, and they basically, at this point, because I lost my job, the judge issued a warrant for my arrest. And Ice was a little bigger than me, so I tried to, remove him personally, and he just sat on top of me until the police got there. So the police showed up and took me to jail, and I turned 30 years old in Travis County Correctional Complex. And at that point is when I decided I need help, and I really need it bad. And I got out, and I had a paycheck, and I went and immediately spent it on alcohol and other things, and drugs and girls. And next thing I know, I burned all my money, and I'm homeless, and my parents were notified by a friend of mine from college, and they came and picked me up, moved me back to San Angelo, Texas, and I moved out to their ranch. And guys, I don't need to go into all this. I can't go into the entire story, but when I'm detoxing, y'all know this feeling. Your heart's missing beats. You're throwing up on the floor. It is a horrible, horrible existence. It is quite literally hell when you need your fix, and you are one of us, and I can't get it. So I'm out at the ranch, and I drank all the cooking sherry, I drank all the Listerine, I drank everything that had alcohol content in it, and I finally found a bottle of rubbing alcohol, and I drank that too. And I looked at it at the age of 30 years old and said, this will probably kill me, don't really care. Drank it, ended up puking blood everywhere, going back to the hospital again. And at that point, I was having these I thought I'd gone schizophrenic, and I thought there were people after me. And so I'd been diagnosed bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, all the above. And so I'm off my medication, and so I'm going back to get my medication. And I get to Austin, and I'm having one of those episodes, and I hit my knees, and I prayed. And I had a sponsor at the time. He's now my current boss, and my sponsor now is his sponsor. And they were both telling me, Gabe, you are absolutely beyond human aid, and you need help. And so I did. I hit my knees in that hotel room in Austin, Texas, and something happened, and there was an experience that I had, and I was able to not go across the street that night to that bar. And I drove home, and I redid my fist up with my sponsor, and that was the beginning of I really started to appreciate this program, and something really did happen at that time in my life. And I'd experienced something was different, and I was kind of getting to this point to where I was looking for God, and I was starting to experience him a little bit. And then I met a girl. She's got my hair. And so I met a girl, and I fell in love, and I basically made her God. I didn't basically. I made her God. And so I'm still sponsoring people. God help them. And trying to work with people. And I'm going to meetings and all this stuff. But, I'm so consumed with this person that everything that's going on with her is affecting my life. And we got into a fight. I was 9 months sober. And we're out at her place. She lived outside of town. I was staying at my parents' ranch. And my dad took a job in New Mexico. So the idea was Gabe's going to take care of the ranch and study for the bar exam. And everyone's going to live happily ever after. Right? And so I'm taking care of the ranch. And I lost my medication again. Didn't lose the speed they prescribed me. Always had that on me. But I lost the other stuff. And you don't want to quit that kind of stuff cold turkey. And so I'm going back to look for it, and I leave, and we're in a huge fight. We're arguing over the phone. I get back to her house, and she's just sitting there, and she's just texting on her phone. She won't look at me. And the pain had gotten so bad that I couldn't deal with it anymore, and I had no God in my life, and I realize that now. And I had to change the way I felt because this was unbearable. So I went inside and I knew where her alcohol was, and I started drinking. And I'd been sober for 9 months, so my tolerance was a little low. I'm in a blackout drunk. She kicks me out. I ended up going back to my parents' ranch. Well, I'd made a verbal agreement with my family that if I relapsed, I would go into a sober living home. And so they came down. My mother drove down and met my quasi-godfather, Tip, and they come out there, and they come inside, and I'm in a blackout drunk. This is after my sponsor, and at the time, my boss, and my new sponsor, who's my sponsor now, came out there, tried to talk to me, and they were like, Gabe, it was like talking to a demon. It was incredible. We didn't know who you were. And so my mother and Tip come inside, and there's a struggle inside. They're trying to remove me from the house, and I'm in a blackout drunk. And I always had a hot AR-15 by the front door because I lived alone. It was just me and my 2 dogs. So I grabbed this AR-15. After there was a fight inside between Tip and I, and he's trying to drag me out, they walk outside, and I grab the AR-15. This is all told to me by police reports in my family. And I follow them outside, and my mother is standing by her car, and Tip is standing by his truck, and we're in a carport. And I say, get the F off my ranch. And they turn around and they say, Gabe, this isn't your ranch. And they start approaching me, and I take that AR-15, and I'm putting what we think is a proverbial line in the sand, and I start discharging that rifle in front of them. And when I came to, Tip is screaming, and he says, do you realize what you've done? And I vaguely remember any of this. I just remember seeing blood everywhere, and I shot him in the top of the foot. My mother caught around in the femoral artery, and she's dying on the concrete, and there's blood everywhere. And I throw the AR-15, and I go to my mother, who I love to death, and I say, Tip, can you help her? And he said, I don't know. He takes his tie off, and he puts a tourniquet on her leg, and we get her in the truck, and they leave, and I'm pretty sure I've killed my mother. So I go get the 12-gauge shotgun, and I get some more alcohol, and I'm waiting for the police to arrive. And the police do arrive, and they bring everybody, the Texas Rangers, the SWAT teams, helicopters. And I walk outside, and I wave a shotgun at them, and I said horrible, horrible things to these people, trying to get them to kill me. And they didn't. And I went back inside, and they got a tank from Abilene, Texas, and they came back, and they were throwing tear gas in. And I couldn't breathe, and so I'm trying to debate how to do this with the 12-gauge, and I don't want to mess this up. And so I've got the 12-gauge barrel in my mouth, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it with my thumb or with my toe. And I can't breathe, and it's do this now or go outside. And I thought to myself, my dad's going to have to clean this up. And I thought, I got on my knees and I prayed. And I figured, well, if they kill me, then that's God's, that will be done. And if they don't, that will be done. So I walked outside, and they didn't. They zip-tied me, and they took me to jail. And I'm sitting in county jail, and I never bonded out. That was June 3rd, 2014. And here's how insane I am. I wrote a letter to one of my best friends, who's still one of my best friends to this day, in my stay in county jail, and I'm still justifying. Well, they shouldn't have come into my house. I had a reasonable expectation of privacy. This is how insane I am. This is insanity. I nearly killed my mother, and I'm somehow thinking I'm going to be able to walk out of this place a free man. Finally, got explained to me, Gabe, most normal people don't have one SWAT team raid. You have 2. And they showed me the statute, and there's a line in there that says recklessly for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. And I knew that. I knew that what I did, I was guilty of. And I sat there, and there were some people, some good people in that cell with me, and they said, man, if I'm on a jury, I'm giving you at least 25. I said, okay. I had a really good attorney by the grace of God, and there were other factors, and some other things came in, and they offered me 8 years. And I went down there and I signed that as fast as I could. And guys, the girl stayed in a relationship with me. And I went to the penitentiary, and she stayed with me for 1.5 years, and she was still my God. And when they moved me to Beaumont, Texas, she started falling off. And I'm holding on to this person as desperately as I can. And I'm screaming into the telephone, and I look like a real lunatic. And I hang up the phone one day, and there were 2 guys sitting behind me. And they said, hey, man, why don't you come sit down with us for a second? We need to talk. And I came down, and those two men are in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, strong men of God I still stay in touch with today. They said, brother, you need some freedom because you don't have any. I said, yeah, I knew it. So we started, they said, when you get that letter that says that she's leaving, you don't ever respond again. You let her go. And that letter came. And I was still holding on. They called my bunk to go to visitation. My parents are in New Mexico. She was the only other person on my visitation list. And so I went down there, and I'm so happy. Wrong dorm. They called the wrong bunk. I went back, and I sat on my bed, and I wept. My God had just walked out of my life. I had just been forsaken. And my friends identified that. Said, Gabe, your God hasn't forsaken you. Human beings forsake human beings. It happens all the time. We are broken people, every one of us, and we all stand before Him the same. God loves you, and you need to develop a real relationship with Him. And I remember I was sitting in church that weekend, and I was just bawling, and I was broken. And guys, the newcomers that are in here, you know, I think it was at the beginning of this conference, we read A Vision for You. Now, it doesn't talk about, never says rock bottom. It does say we will know a loneliness if you do. It says we will come to that jumping off point. And I was there. And that is the most lonely, and it's the most beautiful place on the planet, spiritually. It is that place where I can finally see the truth for the truth and the false for the false. It was where I can finally see what I've done to my family. I didn't just nearly kill them physically. I robbed them emotionally. I robbed them spiritually. I took these people and I drugged them through hell. Not just them, my sister, my grandmother, everybody that was involved in this thing. I stole from them for 31 years. And so I started listening to these guys. The first time I ever listened to anybody was when they said, don't ever contact her again. And I just decided at this point, I'm so broken, I'm going to listen to everything these guys say. And everything that's coming out of these guys' mouths, that's coming from this book and some other texts, I'm like, dude, I think God sent you because I needed to hear it this way. I needed it. And I'm praying for it. And these were my spiritual guides. And I grasped onto them with the desperation of a drowning man. They were the tassels I grabbed a hold of because I was broken and I was so lost. And I didn't know who I was. And then we start going through this and you know, the text and what we talk about in here, I start to realize this has nothing to do with alcohol. I couldn't handle personal relationships. I couldn't control my emotional nature. I was a prey to depression and misery. I couldn't make a living. I was unhappy. I was full of fear. I couldn't be of real use to anybody. That's how I felt my whole life. And some other things just hit me right between the eyes. More than most, the alcoholic leaves a double life. God, that was me. I am the actor. I want to enjoy a certain reputation. In my heart, I know I don't deserve it. And I hated myself. I had no love for me, and I certainly didn't have any love for anybody else. I was just simply existing. And these guys taught me how to start loving some other people and just start taking some actions. That was my step one experience because I came to the end of myself. I finally got to this point. And then these guys started explaining some things to me, and they're like, Gabe, you pretty much checked off everything else. You tried everything. Your family tried everything. What is left? By process of the elimination, you may want to be at least willing to believe that there is a power greater than yourself. And it says in our book that crushed by a self-imposed crisis, We must fearlessly face the proposition that God either is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't, and I had a choice to make. And I was at this point in my life where I just wanted him in my life so much. And there was no sorry I could say to anybody to bring anything back. Everything's just a mess, and I just wanted this to be made whole. And these guys promised me that there was a way. And so I just started doing what they said. And I said the third step prayer like I'd said it many other times. And I said it, but this time I meant every single word of it. And I say it every single night. And then I worked all these steps. And, when you do your fourth step, it says that we straighten out, we remedy the spiritual malady, and then we straighten out physically and mentally, and that happens. And we want the stuff removed, root and branch. And I still had this resentment, I had this depression, and I speed things up. I did my 4.5 years. I was working these steps, and I called home. I'd written letters to apologize to people knowing that they had heard sorry 1,000 times. And I called home on Christmas Day, 2015, and my mom said, and my mother and I had established a relationship. We were talking, and she said, "Do you want to talk to Tip?" And I'd never spoken with Tip since the incident. And I got on the phone on Christmas Day, and we talked for a while, and I called back later that night, and he said, my mom was crying, and she said, "You need to talk to Tip." And I talked to Tip, and Tip said, "Gabe, there's something different, and I want you to come home." I melted. For the first time in my life, I understood what grace meant. I'm on the phone on Christmas Day. I deserved every minute of time I got, and then some. I didn't deserve this. I didn't deserve these people's forgiveness. Yet they loved me, and they forgave me. And that was so powerful to me. And I had made a promise to God already that this time wouldn't be in vain. And I made my first parole by the grace of God. And when I got home, there was still some pain from the relationship that was there because I kept running into her and her friends. And my sponsor now is a fantastic individual. He said, "I want you to work the steps again." So I worked the steps. And, when I did that fifth step, I did it with humility, fearlessness, and honesty. And I wanted for so much for this to be over, and I just wanted it to go away. And when I went and did 6 and 7, I begged God to take it, the good and the bad. Take everything, please. 8 and 9 for me today, guys. At that point in my life, yes, I wrote my sister a letter. I wrote Tip a letter. I wrote people letters, but it was all about living a different life. That's my amends to my family and my community. And the way I do that is 10, 11, and 12. And I love 10, 11, and 12. It is how I practice my spiritual walk. It is how I practice all my affairs every single day. And when I received that, when I talked to Tip that day and they forgave me, and I worked this program and I started to realize things about what I had done to everybody else, it changed something. And working this program and working with other people changes this. And I started to realize, who am I not to forgive somebody? And then I started doing in prayer and meditation, I started to realize this depression was coming from me not being able to forgive my ex-girlfriend and forgive myself. And I spent a lot of time in prayer, praying for blessings for that person, and a lot of time working with other alcoholics because I'm uniquely qualified to work with addicts and alcoholics, and that's what I do. And all my life I was searching for meaning. I was looking for it everywhere. In alcohol, drugs, girls, money, career. And I put all that stuff in here. All of it. Trying to satisfy this. and all of it was too small. It just rattled around in there. And when I work with alcoholics today, and a lot of the guys I sponsor, a lot of them get to 10 and 11 and then they stop working. They're missing the magic. They're missing the absolute greatest part of this program. When I get to sit and work with another person, and I get to go into Journey Recovery Center in San Angelo, Texas, and work with these guys, and watch lights turn on, and watch people that were sitting in the same chairs that I was sitting at, and watching those volunteers come in when I was sitting there and I had nothing left to hold on to but what was coming out of these people's mouths, and I'm crying my heart out, and I said, I want what these people have, and I want it so badly, and I want to be what these people are. And I grabbed a hold of what they were saying, and I did what they told me to do. And when I'm sitting there working with other people, and I see that light come on, and they say the same thing to me, there is nothing more powerful on earth and meaningful on earth than that. For once in my life, I realized that life had a meaning to it. It wasn't just a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury signifying nothing. There was meaning in my life, eternal meaning in my life, and I'm getting to participate in it right now. It was better than any sunset or song or anything incredible I've ever seen in my life that are all dim reflections of God. I got to stand in the Almighty's presence and get used by Him. And I get to do it every single day. And I watch families get mended. I watch kids come home. I've watched people walk off of death row. It is the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And it's way better than any high drunk I've ever had. Bar none, ever. And instead of getting worse and just chasing it, it gets better and better and better and better. And today I get to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. I get to be part of the harmony and not the confusion, because for all of my life, for 31 years, I stole and robbed from the people I cared about. Every one of them. And I took from you and I took from everybody around me to satisfy this and to make this better. And I didn't know how to love anybody, and I didn't know how to love myself. And I still didn't. It was by loving other people and not expecting something from God, just giving the same mercy that my family gave me. Because if we don't show mercy, we can receive. We shouldn't expect to get any. And when I get and I go and I spend that time with them and it's just love, it changes everything. I go and I turn on the news, and I'm opinionated. I grew up believing a certain type of way. And by the way, I just turned it on before I came over here, and it ain't getting any better. I'm serious. It's getting worse. For real, there's some sad stuff going on, and pray for those people. Guys, I want to go change it. Like, I feel like I'm somebody and I can go change this stuff. If I'm going to go change this according to my will, it's going to end in one gigantic SWAT team raid based on my own experience. It would probably end in nuclear war. Do you know how I change anything? I go and I work with an alcoholic. I go and I don't ask him who he voted for. I don't ask him where he came from. I don't think he cares who's running for office, because his life is on fire and he just wants some peace in his life, and he sees something I have and he wants it. And I just share that freely with that person, and I get to participate in God's love. And then he goes and he tells the village what God did for him, because God did it for him. We just get to be the vessel. We just get to participate in the program. It says on the top of page 77, my real purpose is to be a maximum service to God and the people about me. I get to do that today. I get to do that, and I get to... Things still happen, guys. Horrible things happen. My sponsor is one of the most fantastic people on the planet. Him and I disagree. We're like a married couple sometimes. We even work together. And I actually got docked on my review for the way we argued. And it was like, but we do. He's an incredible person. We don't always see eye to eye. But I will say this. When I was locked up, his son was supposed to pick up a year. And the day his son was supposed to pick up a year, they found him dead from an overdose from heroin. My sponsor had a speaking obligation in Odessa that night, and he went and he spoke. His wife is in this program too. She's a fantastic individual. She spoke last month. For the people that their son and my sponsor and his wife have touched, you better believe that anytime we're having a bad day, that comes across our mind. That man walked through the fire. He rode the storm. And sometimes it's just for one person. And he did it. And he stayed sober through that. That's an incredible testimony. Only God can do that. Only God can do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. And people watch this today and they're like, the state of Texas, Gabe's family, and Gabe tried everything. He didn't do that. Don't ever put God in a box, guys. We live in a crazy world. They call it cancel culture. By the grace of God, I was canceled on June 3rd, 2014 in the eyes of man, and I was reborn in the eyes of God.
Amen.
It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I don't regret prison. I regret the people I hurt. My relationship with my mother and father right now is better than it has ever been in my entire life. I can sit in their presence and not expect anything or want anything. I can just sit there and love them. I've got a fantastic job today. I don't have a license to practice law. I get to do everything I want to do. I oversee compliance at a fantastic company. I was cured from the hepatitis C. God showed up in so many different ways in my life, and He shows up all the time. And there are still hard times. And we hear about them when people come up here and speak. We will face tragedy. We will walk through this. Simple fact is, a family sitting at a table of four, someone's going to see them all pass away. That's the fact. That's the tragedy of this whole thing. But God never forsakes us. And I realized real quick that I better be okay with losing everything that I have today and be able to walk through that. Because that's a testimony that we're putting it out to the people. Bill Wilson said that our chief obligation to the newcomer is an adequate representation of this program. It's what I'm doing out there. I can get up here and spit good game. What am I doing out there? What are my actions? Am I working with other people? Am I making it about other people? When I have a bad day, when I get mad at somebody and I'm human and I fail, do I make my amends to them? Do I send my inventory to my sponsor? That's what we do. It's the thing we got going. But do I do my inventory? Do I wake up and get on my knees every single morning before I go out my front door? Do I go to bed with God on my mind, on my knees before I go to bed? And I don't do it because I expect anything. I do it because it gives me a peace and a love and a joy and a meaning today that I've been looking for my entire life, and that is priceless. It is absolutely priceless, and I finally found out who Gabe is. And because I made that decision, my family forgave me. And every relationship in my life but one was restored. And that was the one at the time I wanted the most. And I was praying to God, please restore it. And I know now why it wasn't restored. And I'm grateful for it. And my sister, she brought my mother multiple times. And I could tell my sister was very upset. I nearly killed her mother. That's understandable. And I couldn't say sorry. All I could do was just live this program, guys. And she's a strong spiritual person. And I knew that I just had to give that to God. And I was home for a year out of prison. And my sister called me and said, what's your address? And so I gave it to her. And received this letter. She says, Dear Gabe, over a year ago you wrote to me asking me for forgiveness. You finally put into words what I'd longed to hear, and I was so grateful. And yet, even though my gratefulness, I didn't respond. I did forgive you, and I do forgive you, but at the time, it was still so much more of a process for me. I was in the process of forgiving you, even though I woke daily declaring forgiveness and blessings. I don't know why it has taken me so long to respond. Part of it, sheer laziness to the art of the letter writing seems to have been lost. Part of it, fear and stirring up feelings which I was afraid were still there. Anger, doubt, hurt, which would tell me I hadn't forgiven. And part of it, disobedience to God for true unknowns. Either way, I sit here this morning with no stirred up feelings other than love. I am so grateful to have you back. It's been so long, much longer than that physical prison sentence. And I do forgive. And I ask you to please forgive me for taking so long, for being so slow, for being so unforgiving and unloving, for not being there for you. Jesus showed me a side of me that I didn't care for, and I struggled madly with it. But today I walk free. I love you. I am proud of you. I forgive myself. I desire for us to start anew as brother and sister, to get to know each other, to be a support for each other, to be a listening ear for each other. You are my only brother, and I am so glad you're mine. I love you, Christian. And that's why we do this. That is the power of God and the power that God has in restoration. I've had people come to me that have had their rights terminated by the state of Texas. Don't ever put God in a box. Develop a relationship with Him and we'll just watch miracles happen. God is in the business of restoring, and He's in the business of giving us peace and giving us meaning and giving us purpose. And I am so absolutely grateful to be a member of this group. We are not a glum lot. I wouldn't trade this for anything. And people ask me all the time, Gabe, what was your spiritual awakening? It was when I woke up one day and I realized, I know Linda said it last night, I say this all the time, this wasn't a curse. This is a blessing. And every single person in this room is called, every one of us, to a higher purpose. And I'm so grateful for it. And I'm so grateful for God. And thank y'all so much for letting me come. I love you all.